Okay, we've got to talk about UFOs in the White House. Get in here, this is Jack with Cosmic Road. I talk about UFOs and the paranormal. Please hit like, please subscribe, share in social media, and let me know what you think about all this in the comments below. When I first learned recently that the White House had gotten interested in UFOs and was actually allied with Chuck Schumer to push this legislation that could redefine how the government approaches UFOs and is the next step in UFO disclosure, I was initially very hesitant, very reluctant, very wary about this. It seemed to me that it was the establishment rearing its ugly head to assert control of UFO disclosure and to control the narrative. And indeed, that may have been a correct assumption, but what if it wasn't? What if I was looking at it all wrong? What if it is, in fact, a different entity, the White House in this case, actually stepping in to seize control of the narrative from those who have always controlled it? Well, I'm thinking maybe there's an avenue for that to be the case. And let me walk you through it. These are some recent comments from Chris Sharp, you know, an ace journalist. And, well, I'll just take you through it. But let's listen to what Chris has to say, and we'll go from there.
So the White House seems to be criticizing those who are going against these possible sightings and the possibility. Does this indicate a significant shift from federal authorities here in the States on this?
Yes, there is a real shift occurring now. The White House realizes that this is a real thing. After the February shootdowns over Alaska and other states, they set up an interagency team led by Jake Sullivan. And my sources already also told me that the recent Chuck Schumer amendment proposed for the National Defense Authorization Act was done in coordination with the White House. And that included language of basically repossessing craft in private hands, which were of unknown origin or non-human origin. So, yeah, this is getting real pretty quickly.
Yeah, picking up a lot of...
Okay, so there you go. It's the Inter-Office U.A.P. program created by the White House in the wake of the Balloon Gate situation, those shootdowns that occurred. And we still don't really know what that was all about. The first one was unambiguously a Chinese spy balloon. And we have pictures of that and, you know, other evidence of that. For those 3 additional cases, one of them over Canadian airspace, but shot down by U.S. fighters, we don't have any information. We don't have any photos, any videos. There is no actual evidence of what happened. There have been no private companies coming out claiming that this was their you know, aerostats or whatever, their research balloons, you know, that were shot down by mistake. So were they all Chinese spy balloons? If they were, why didn't they release that footage? Because they released it the first time. Could those have been genuine UFOs? I had always thought that was unlikely. I figured they were probably just more balloons or something. But I've always wondered because they would never release that footage. But it is worth noting that that is when the White House seems to have gotten involved in this. Or at least that's what they're claiming. Is that the excuse they needed to step in and get involved? Could that whole Balloon Gate situation have been engineered and created artificially to give the White House an excuse to step in and get involved? I don't know. It's all speculation. They haven't even released the footage. We don't know what went on there. At first, they said the search and the recovery of those materials had been called off. And then we found out later that at least in one case, it was still ongoing. And it's been low these many months later, and we have not heard anything on that. So anyway, moving on from Balloon Gate, but it is very interesting that that is how the White House seems to have gotten involved. Well, then we have Jake Sullivan, who seems to be leading the White House Inter-Office Agency on UFOs. And he is a key figure in this. So let's just go to Jake Sullivan. Who is this guy? Who is this Jake cat, anyway? Well, Jake Sullivan is the National Security Advisor to President Biden, a visiting lecturer in law at Yale Law School, and a non-resident senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Jake served in the Obama administration as National Security Advisor to Vice President Joe Biden and Director of Policy Planning at the U.S. Department of State, as well as Deputy Chief of Staff to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. He was the senior policy advisor on Secretary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign and previously served as deputy policy director on Hillary's presidential campaign in 2008 and as a member of the debate preparation team for Barack Obama's general election campaign. So, in other words, Mr. Washington Insider. Normally, you would think of him as very much an establishment figure, and indeed he is. And yet, could he also be leading the efforts to wrest control of the UFO, wrest control of the UFO issue from those who have managed it all these years? And has this all come about because of Balloongate? So we need to know who this cat is, and we need to keep our eyes on this guy, since he is possibly the antidote to Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, the lovely Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. And make no mistake, the Biden administration is really coming out strongly in support of UFO disclosure, at least openly. Again, that could simply be to control the narrative on UFOs and to establish this Council of Nine gatekeeping committee, which will, serve as, the arbiter of what the public is allowed to see. But at the same time, it's worth noting that you get articles like this. Biden administration distanced itself from the Pentagon official who bashed UFO hearing. Now, I've already talked about this. This is in reference to Susan Go publicly saying that Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick's letter that he wrote denouncing the David Grush hearing was his own personal beliefs and statements and did not reflect AARO. And indeed, that's what Kirkpatrick himself said. Now, Susan Goff is not the White House spokesperson, but this article from Fox, interestingly, is saying it's the Biden administration that is actually distancing itself from Sean Kirkpatrick. But either way, whether it's the Biden administration or the Pentagon, who Susan Goff represents, it is important that is the media narrative that Biden is distancing himself from Sean Kirkpatrick, and that is extremely interesting. So we have, on the one hand, Jake Sullivan leading the White House's Inter-Office U.A.P. program, and we have Biden possibly distancing himself from Sean Kirkpatrick, and we have this new legislation that paradoxically is going to compel whistleblowers to go through AARO. We have a whole bunch of different takes and different ways of looking at this. But one way to look at it, the way I had been looking at it, is that the establishment is trying to seize control of the narrative. But at the same time, you have the equally possible idea that maybe it is an independent entity being created in this inter-office U.A.P. program created by the executive branch and led by Jake Sullivan that could be trying to wrest control of the UFO issue from the already established UFO control group. The executive branch seems to be coming out in a big way on UFOs, and that is very exciting. I mean, I, like most Americans that are interested at all in the UFO issue, have always dreamed about the day when the president would come out and address the press in a live press conference and say, "My fellow Americans, we are not alone." Does this sudden executive interest in UFOs that apparently began with a bunch of balloons, could that day be getting closer? Is that what all of this means? Or is it simply the establishment trying to assert control and prevent the truth from coming out like it has all along? But if that were the case, why create a separate entity to handle this matter instead of the pre-existing control group and the mechanisms for the control group, for example, Arrow? So what's going on? Where's the truth? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. I think this is a highly intriguing situation. We have this new entity being created, and now we have news that this entity is in play. And because we had not heard anything about this UAP interoffice program since its inception with Balloon Gate. It was announced right at that time that this new office was being created, and we haven't heard anything about them since then. I had kind of thought maybe they had faded away because they were irrelevant because of Arrow. But now we learn, in fact, they may be instrumental to behind the scenes going on in Washington, D.C. and how the executive branch is handling UFOs. So I think this is fascinating. I don't know which way the pendulum is going to swing on this one, but let me know which way you think it's swinging in the comments below. And if you have enjoyed this video, give me a big thumbs up. Sure would appreciate it. Smash the subscribe button and the bell to be notified of future videos. Join me on social media. There's Facebook and Twitter links below. And I'll see you next time. This is Jack with Cosmic Road.